I'm Janice Robinson. I wear several hats. I'm Vice President for Diversity and Community Affairs. I'm Associate Professor of Higher Education in the Higher Education Program, and I am your TC Title IX Coordinator as well. And so welcome to Diversity in Doctoral Education, the initiative that we have and we've been running for the last 12 years plus. And this is the first session called What is Doctoral Education? However, we have some wonderful and important guests with us, and they aren't going to be able to stay, but they'll be able to move on. But I wanted to acknowledge them. We have a delegation from the UN and from the University of Shanghai, and a very special leader in the house is President Wang. Can you please ask him to raise his hand? And we want to thank you for being with us. I will be giving more formal introductions, but I want to say a special thank you to our faculty members who were here, who met and greeted them as well. And so that was important to us as a community, and thank you. I'm going to introduce some wonderful people. They are wonderful people, and they are wonderful faculty members and colleagues. And they were able to take this important time out from their day and be with us. And they're the kind of colleagues who we ask them to participate because they are going to be real with you about what is doctoral education. And this program began as a way of thinking about encouraging our master's students to think about doctoral education, even though some of you just got here. And one of the ways in which we can increase those who are interested in doctoral education is to provide information early on, even though it's October, for you to be thinking about do I want to do doctoral education? What is it? How do I go about it? And you're going to be in different stages of your inquiry, but I'm hoping that what you hear and learn and the ability to be able to talk with them will be helpful for you. So I'm going to give some brief introductions. And Dr. María Ghiso, she is Professor of Literacy Education and Chair of the Department of Curriculum and Teaching at TC. And her scholarship investigates literacy in multilingual and transnational context, research partnerships, and community-based research methodologies. Through collaborative inquiry with teachers, students, families, María Paula strives to support schools in being attuned to children's linguistic, cultural, and experiential knowledge in the curriculum, and she advocates for educational opportunities alongside youth and communities. She has published in venues such as Teachers College Record, Research in the Teaching of English, the AERA Open, Harvard Educational Review, Urban Education, and Journal of Literacy Research. And she's the editor of the Language and Literacy series from Teachers College Press. She is she's a co-author of Partnering with Immigrant Communities, Action Through Literacy, which received the Edward Fry Book Award from the Literacy Research Association and the David H. Russell Research Award from the National Council of Teachers of English. She has much more in her bio, and so I just want to give her a big hand, all right? There we go. We have Dr. Mark Anthony Gooden. He is the Christian Johnson Endeavor Professor in Education Leadership at Teachers College. Dr. Gooden's research focuses broadly on culturally responsive school leadership, with specific interests in the principalship, anti-racist leadership, urban educational leadership, and legal issues in education. He is the past president of the University Council for Educational Administration, which is known affectionately as UCEA. It's a consortium of over 100 higher education institutions committed to advancing the preparation and practice of educational leaders for the benefit of schools and children. Dr. Gooden is the 2017 recipient of the UCA J. Scribner Mentoring Award and the 2021 recipient of the UCEA Master Professor Award for Distinguished Service in Teaching, Curriculum Development, and Student Mentoring. He is the co-author of 5 Practices for Equity-Focused School Leadership, and his research has appeared in a range of venues, including the American Educational Research Journal, Educational Administration Quarterly, Teachers College Record, the Journal of Negro Education and Urban Education, Review of Educational Research, Educational Leadership, and the Education Week. Before entering higher ed, Dr. Gooden served as a secondary mathematics teacher and the departmental chair in the Columbus Public Schools. He earned his BA in mathematics from Albany State University, historically black college and university, and his MED in mathematics education, and a second master's, as well as his PhD in policy and leadership, all from the Ohio State University. Last but not least is Professor Felicia Mensah. She is the department chair of Mathematics, Science, and Technology and professor of science education at Teachers College. Her research and teaching addresses diversity, equity, and identity issues in science education. Her most recent work utilizes critical race theory and intersectionality to transform teacher education research and practice. Her focus on preparing future teacher educators and teacher educators of color for racial literacy combines years of teaching, mentoring, and outreach in pre-K through 12 schools and post-secondary education. Before her career in teaching in academia, Professor Mensah worked in the microbiology lab of a large consumer products company and the medical laboratory of a regional hospital system in North Carolina. Very quickly, this year, Professor Mensah received the 2024 AERA Scholars of Color in Education Distinguished Career Contribution Award and the 2024 Outstanding Mentor Award from the Association for Science Teacher Education. She is also, I'd like to announce, the Teachers College, Columbia University's recipient of our Elaine Brantley Award in Community and Civility. And she will be awarded that plaque at our State of the College address next Wednesday, and I hope you all will be there. It is the college's highest award for community here. So give her a big hand. And Professor Mensah will be our moderator, and I am going to turn it over to her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janice. Thank you all for being with us this afternoon. We enjoyed the mix and mingle we had a little bit earlier with everyone. So I have the pleasure of being able to moderate this panel, and I've done it for a number of years in collaboration with Janice's office, but I also have the pleasure of being able to talk with my colleagues and get to know them a little bit better. So this is very informal, even though I'll have questions that I'm going to ask them. Get your questions ready as well. So we will have a Q&A. If we do not address everything that's on your mind, please ask us, and we'll be able to answer your questions. But we're first going to start off with, just tell us what is the difference between master's or doctoral. What's the difference between master's education and doctoral education?
I think one difference is that doctoral education, in your master's education, you're studying a particular topic, and maybe you're going for professionalization in, for example, teacher certification or other areas. And doctoral education is not as much about taking certain courses. Courses are important, but it's really centered around contributing to your research question, the things you want to explore and find out. So you may get done with certain requirements, but you're really trying to fuel that all into what does it mean for what I'm interested in, my topic, my question, what I want my research to benefit and contribute to. So I think that's one distinction?
Yes, love that answer, Maria, Paula. I would just add, I've had a number of interesting conversations with students over the years, particularly my doctoral students, and it was really trying to get them to change the mindset from a doctoral degree is into a collection of courses, kind of like a master's degree. That's kind of a first description, but bear with me. But what it was really working to convince them that this doctoral degree thing was your opportunity to become an independent researcher. It was an invitation from faculty members to become one of us. Whether you think that's sexy or not, that's what we were trying to do, right? So it is very much an exciting time. It's more of a roller coaster. I felt like my master's degrees, both of them, were parts of cohorts that were really collaborative and they worked with you and we did things together. We also had a cohort in the Ph.D. program at Ohio State, and that was kind of in place for the first couple of years. But that third year, I just didn't feel like I was quite clear on what that meant, because honestly, it was very lonely for a person like me who was more extrovert, who liked people being around me, who liked bouncing my ideas. It doesn't mean that I couldn't still do that, but it was be even lonelier if I didn't take the initiative. Yes, I spent many hours in the library reading and research, which is what doctoral research requires. But I also recognized that there were people all over the country, and some right in my cohort, doing the same thing. So I made time to connect with them, and also with professors, because once again, it was independent thinking, it was independent research, but it really was a time I really drew on my advisor. There really was a relationship there, and I think that had a lot to do with my success, honestly, because if I did not figure that part out, and sometimes it takes people a while to do that, it would have taken a longer time. So we just have to be mindful that it is very different from a master's, but and exciting in different kinds of ways.
Thank you both. So let's actually talk a little bit about your experiences in applying for a doctoral program. So doctoral programs can be various sizes. It can be small, mid-size, large. And some of you, I already know, are probably even thinking about the doctoral programs we have at Teachers College. But just tell us a little bit about your doctoral experience applying for it and what your size and kind of like that partial cohort model may have been in your doctoral studies. But just kind of give us a general overview about your experiences applying and being in a doctoral program.
Well, I think the idea of a doctoral program actually started here at Teachers College. I was a teacher in a nearby school, and I was a cooperating teacher to student teachers that I hosted in my kindergarten classroom. And because of that, I got to take free courses at Teachers College, and one of my professors mentioned applying to a doctoral program. And so it's really interesting, sort of, where will you hear that doctoral education is for you? And that's the importance of these kinds of events that we have here today. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in a program now called Literacy Studies, called Reading, Writing, and Literacy. And what was really fantastic about that program was that it really challenged the idea that theory and practice were separate. And so I very much came in with an identity as a teacher, right? That I want to go into doctoral education to improve practice and to study things that were happening in the classroom. And I did not have to shed my identity as a teacher in order to become a researcher. And that was really powerful to hear about. And that was in part because of the intellectual tradition of the place that I entered, which was where there was a lot of work on theorizing practitioner research and teachers' knowledge of classroom as theoretical and intellectual practice. So I think one recommendation is to really look out there to see, you know, what's a topic that you're interested in and where is that research happening, because it may come from different stances. What's a good fit for the commitments and values that you have? I think I happened on it by chance, but it was a great fit because of this orientation. And I think in hindsight, it would have been good to do, you know, to know that you can talk to professors, you can make their office hours and ask them about their doctoral programs. They're available there for you. It's not just, blindly apply anywhere, but just to know that that's a right that you have, right? To inquire. I didn't really know about that and was lucky to find a good home.
No, I think that's fantastic to hear. Like, I think you did it. Yours was closer to right than mine. I'm going to give you the example, probably a proper way to approach it. But similar to Professor Ghiso, I was a mathematics teacher at the time, and there was a partnership between Columbus City Schools and The Ohio State University. Go Bucks! That's how they program. Sorry. That essentially I could go to school for free, and I had taken enough courses, and I had actually been introduced to some of the professors who taught in the doctoral program I wanted to go into, which at the time I was in what was called, I think it was teaching and learning. Because Ohio State was so big, there were 3 schools of education in the College of Education. So I was in the School of Teaching and Learning, but I wanted to be in the School of Policy and Leadership. That's where I wanted to get my Ph.D. However, even though I'd done fairly well in the classes with those professors, I never asked directly about what does one do if they're interested in going into a doc program. I just applied. And since I saw their professors, I thought they know me, I know them. But what I didn't know, and I found out that day that we went to like a lunch, and almost every person who was there, like they had made it to the next level, but they also were like talking to like one advisor, or maybe one advisor was talking to 2 students. And those were the people that they were going to work with. Those are the people that they were going to mentor. And I was kind of like, without a date, just talking to anybody, like, who's my date, right? And so what I realized is, even though I applied and I had done quite well, Ohio State had a really kind of an intimidating interview process. We can talk about the process and the best way to do it. But what I recognized at the end of that process is, while I had interviewed strongly, I had strong grades, there were concerns with some professors around the table. What I learned later was mainly one, that my GRE verbal score was a little low. So what that meant is I was denied admission into the program. And I met a professor who pulled me over to the side and explained all of that to me. And even before I got the rejection letter, said, "You're going to get a rejection letter." I go, how do you know that? And he told me, this is why, and this is what you should do about it. Which was great, because then I developed a relationship with a professor who saw and understood that I didn't really know a lot about it, and knew that it's kind of a cryptic process. And so ultimately, I reapplied within that same period, and petitioned them to review my application, and was actually able to get admitted that same year. However, it was like a blessing in disguise, because I realized if it were possible, I really wanted to do full-time doctoral study. So I said I was going to complete 1 more year of teaching, and I would come back next year. So I asked, once I was admitted, is it possible to defer enrollment? Of course, this time I became a little wiser. I asked the professor, like, can I defer and with it? And then they explained to me how you could ask for deferment. And so I came in the following year with a lot more wisdom, actually, and a bigger understanding for how you should actually engage with professors. So I did a little bit of that in between that year of deferment.
So in my process, I'm originally from North Carolina, and so I thought about staying in the state, and I'm like, well, maybe I should go somewhere else. And so I was a little bit more strategic about trying to find my program, and I wanted to stay in the Southeast. So I applied to Virginia, Maryland, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. So up and down the East Coast. And so I got accepted to Florida State University and went there. So as you're thinking about the places where you want to go, you can have a map to think about where you want to go or not, but really do your research on the institution itself. Finding out, as Maria Paula said, like, where is the work happening that you're most interested in? And that could be a really good starting place for you. So read the faculty's bios and see if there's a connection between you and what the faculty's research is, and then contact them. If you're here at Teachers College, make use of all the faculty that are here. We're a comprehensive institution. So everything you want to know about graduate education in terms of the subject matter is here. And so ask the faculty, use our office hours and come by and talk with us. Ask questions. One of the things I did in terms, I'm actually jumping a little bit ahead, but I kept a journal of my ideas and my thoughts that helped me to think about what my dissertation work is going to be. So you have this wonderful format here to be able to go ahead and start thinking about what your doctoral education possibilities could look like. So as we transition a little bit, we just talked about the program and how we kind of got into our program. I want to talk about how to support that program. We know money is really important. You know, I think you all are feeling that here, being in the programs that you're here. But how did you both fund your doctoral education?
So yes, money is very important. I actually funded my doctoral education through it was kind of a new cutting edge funding program started by Cynthia Dillard. Some of you may know, recognize the name from the field, and Bob Ransom. And interestingly, they had applied for some money from the institution because they recognized there was an issue of a very low number of students of color going into the academy, going on to become professors. So they wrote this grant, and I still remember it was providing research opportunities for future scholars. If you picked up on that acronym, it says PROFs, which I thought was kind of cool at the time. I still think they sounded cool, actually. So they have mentoring built into that, where we got a chance to talk to professors. But what they knew then is what we know now. A number of students decide not to go into doctoral education because they look at the funding, look at how much it costs. Ohio State did have other opportunities to become a graduate research assistant or a graduate teaching assistant, which offered some pretty significant aid. Now, keep in mind, this was a state school. I've been living in the state. I've been teaching for 4 years, so I could get in-state tuition, so it was a little bit lower. And so I had always gone to state schools, and I really wanted my education to be, I just didn't want any debt. I grew up in a household where I felt like I was allergic to debt or something, so I wanted to try to avoid it at all costs. So it worked out really well for me, because in programs where you got, at Ohio State, there was a stipend that you were able to get, but also pay for most of your tuition. So it pays to ask questions like that, and professors are the ones to talk to, and to get make sure you get clarity on the funding, and kind of you can even ask questions like, when students graduate, kind of what's the average amount of debt that they have? How are they, how are they managing that? So I know people have different tolerance levels around debt, and certain people have preferences for different kinds of institutions. So that's all. Take all of that into account with what I've just said.
Yeah, this was probably things I should have asked but didn't know to ask at the time, and so when I applied to my doctoral program, I didn't know the difference between an EDD and a Ph.D., and I was in a program that I was applying to a program that offered both. And I asked another professor whose class I was in, and they characterized it as EDD is more focused on practice, and PhD is more focused on theory. It was not the case, actually, in the program that I was in, but that was how they characterized it. And so I said, well, I'm interested in practice, so I'm going to apply for the EDD. But what turned out that I only discovered, much later on, is that the PhD was a fully funded program made up of people who were, took off time, and they had their college paid for, their courses paid for, and they had a stipend. And EDDs, I received some financial assistance, but that was not the case. So I looked for other scholarships myself. Fortunately, sometimes when you get a scholarship, they reduce your scholarship, so that's one thing I learned the hard way. So I worked part-time. It took me 7 years to graduate from my program. I got some graduate research assistantships where I was able to do research. I did a lot of, I worked for a literacy organization that was part of the university that did a lot of professional development with schools. I would say, so there were a lot of inequities in terms of who received what kind of funding, and also who has the knowledge to know to apply for a certain kind of funding. But on the other hand, you know, it took me longer, but I was 100% grounded in schools. And I was doing the work of supporting teachers with multilingual learning and their literacy work all the way up to high school. And it was very formative for my dissertation and for my future work and my job. It was something I drew on my, you know, when I applied for the job here. And so you know, I think ask questions would be, you know, a recommendation about what kind of funding there is, whether there are different types of programs and how they're funded differently, what the profile of different students are. And then just also look for things, because once you're at an institution, you are also able to know and network and find out about opportunities for funding that you might not have had prior to that. So things do come up, but also it is important to know the full picture, to have a clear understanding of that picture.
Yes, can I add one more thing? And I think certainly an important point that Maria Paula made is kind of this thinking about what you want to do with your doctorate. We all hear different variations of that distinction between the EDD and the Ph.D., and sometimes it's even conflicting. But the part about the amount of time it takes to finish, I was on the other end, finishing quickly, wanted to become a professor, but honestly not quite understanding what it meant to be socialized into a field. So if I went back and people said, well, if you took a couple more years to become better socialized into the field, understanding how to go to conferences, understanding how to have build relationships with schools where you would do research, that probably would have saved me a little bit of a headache in my first 2 years as an assistant prof. There's quite a bit of angst there because I was trying to learn how to become an assistant prof, not realizing that if I had chosen that career early on and socialized properly, it would have been a lot less anxiety, if that makes sense. Yeah, I can share it later, but that part is important.
So you all get your questions ready. We will open up for your questions. I want to now talk about, you've applied to the program and you've gotten into the program and you fill out your applications, but they come to us, right, to read them. So what advice can you give to them about preparing a great statement? What do you look for when you're looking at the doctoral applications? So what do you think is a good doctoral student?
I think knowing the program you're applying to, so what kind of research do people do in that department, and then knowing what you're interested in and what your particular area or question is and how that connects. Right? So we're not looking for people we're often looking for a match, right? Because we have to mentor people into doing their own work. So that doesn't mean it has to be somebody who does exactly what we do, but that we have the skill set, the research expertise to be able to support that scholarly endeavor.
Absolutely. I was trying to think about what I could add, and just in preparation for the statement, having those conversations we talked about is golden, right? Because you want to stand out, especially if there are doc programs that get a lot of applications. And if you have spoken to 3 or 4 people in that department and maybe even developed a relationship with somebody you think you might want to work with, it's a different conversation when your application comes up, honestly. Oh, I know this student I'm thinking about. Valentino is here. I'm thinking I may want to work with this person. Because if you are intending to be mentored by a faculty member, and that's the kind of program you're in, that makes a difference. I mean, there are a limited number of faculty, and some folks may not be taking on students, so it could be a lot of those kinds of things that you will know or get a hint of if you've had those preliminary conversations. So your statement will reflect that. If you've read faculty members' work in the department, I mean, don't be afraid to cite them. Sometimes professors like to see their names in those statements. And, oh, you know, we're easy to please sometimes. But it goes back to the point of, we know that this is somebody who understands our department and wants to work with us. On the other hand, there are people who apply to programs and they just haven't done the reading, don't really understand what folks do, and just say, I just want to be in this program because, you know, I think you all are great. Well, that's nice, but, you know, be willing to go a little bit, a level deeper. And also understand what the requirements are. Some departments have modified expectations around the GRE, so make sure you're aware of that. Some departments don't require it, some people. You know, so just kind of know what that is, so you can speak to that. Last but not least, if there are any interesting projects that they've done that connect to where you might be excited about, because it's also about you're going to be spending time with these folks. And I like Ohio State. I look back and appreciate that. But man, the professors at Ohio State, they were characters. I mean, it was always like a lot of drama. And when I was a full-time student, it was just a lot. I was just like, wow, I'm just sitting here watching like, I don't know, something akin if they could like Real House Professors or something like. It was that kind of stuff, and they were so animated, but it was exciting to watch. But then it also meant that once I got into a doctoral program, I was able to listen and understand. Committee construction was really important at Ohio State. I'm just being frank. There were people who didn't get along, and I would advise people, you don't want those two people on the committee, because if they're fighting and you're trying to defend, it's not going to be comfortable. So be real strategic about that. So again, think about those departments. It won't be so unclear, because the last thing is making sure you talk to students who are going through that process. Talk to current doctoral students. Do not apply to a program without talking to a couple of students.
I'll just add one more thing about the personal statement, which is really draw on your experience. Draw on where your questions coming from, if you're doing practice, or what are the dilemmas, the issues, like how do you, what are your passions, and what's the urgency of the work you want to do. And I think sometimes we have this kind of homogenized idea of what an academic voice is, and it can feel too abstracted, and it's just like you're not in the essay either, right? So make sure that you do talk about, connect with why these topics matter for you. Have that passion come through.
The next series that the office is going to have will be talking about your personal statement. So hopefully you will be able to attend that session. That will give you a little bit more information about what to write in the statement, how to write it, how long it is. I actually have a handout that I'll share for that particular session. I think it's November 7th. Janice? Yeah, November the 7th. Same time, same backstation. So in here, okay, you all are very young. You didn't catch that. That's okay. That's okay. One of the things I do want to say about the personal statement, it's funny, and I want to share it with you. But when you write that personal statement, a little bit more what Mark was saying, that they come into us and we read them as the faculty and say, oh, I really want to be at the university. I really want to work with the faculty. I think Stanford is the best university. I'm like, okay, we're TC. So me, that's the proofreading of your essay. We know that you're probably applying to multiple universities, but please proofread your statement and make sure that Stanford is not going to come across our desk. and I'll tell you, we get one, every so often, but it's always funny because we're reading like, oh, you thought we were so great, but it says Stanford here, or it says UPenn, or it says, whatever. But that's just proofread your statement. Please proofread your statement. So I want to move to, we talked a little bit about advising. So advising is a really important part of your doctoral program, more so than your master's program, I would say. And so talk to us a little bit about how do you work with that relationship between yourself and your faculty advisor or faculty advisors. You could have more than one advisor or advisees. Just talk about that relationship building, because you will be in your program for quite some time. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Nah, you know, life can happen. It could be a long time. So you're going to get to know the faculty within your department. So you all talk a little bit about that.
I'll just say, I mean, different faculty have different approaches to mentoring, different styles, and so, you know, just working that out with them to see, you know, what's a good chemistry with a working process among the two of you, right? For me, it's been such a blessing to work with doctoral students because I learned so much along the way, and it really has been a collaborative relationship where they are, you know, I'm certainly guiding them through the process, but they also bring their energies and participate in our projects and, you know, bring new horizons. So I think that give and take is important, finding someone who you feel comfortable that they're going to, you'll be able to take advice, but also know that it's not, it's meant to support you, not to tear you down, right? And that it's, and that you're going to have to grow and learn, and so will your advisor too along the way.
Yes, I would say if you can think about what you want to do next, like I'm just going to throw this example. If you're pretty sure or 75% sure you want to enter the academy, I would probably work with someone who perhaps has a reputation for publishing with their students, right? Or, and you know, once again, I would still maybe talk to the students. What's it like to work with that person? Because that can be tough. Publishing is a difficult process. Am I ready for that? You know, or would I like somebody who, you know, is a little more, nurturing, maybe more fuzzy? I selected an advisor, and a lot of my friends were a little surprised. But you know, I kind of appreciated his personality. Once again, I was kind of learning along the way, and to put it in context. So this person was he had an EDD, had been a historian before coming back to higher education as a person. He got his JD. So he really embraced the Juris Doctor, the lawyer persona. I mean, complete with, like, his classes were like really intense. The Socratic method, he would come in and slam books on the table. People would be crying in his, it was just really intense. And you know, every class was like, you know, facts, issue, rules, analysis, and conclusion for the case, everything. And so some people like that. And some people were like, I can't wait to get out of this class, and I don't like him. And so when it came time to get an advisor, I was having a conversation with him specifically around critical race theory and how it interfaces with the law and so. And I was like, can I work with him? And he was like, you know, I said, well, I have a stipulation. I'd like to finish in like 3 years. It's kind of like, you know, power to the corner. Like, what? He was like, oh, I can help you get out in 3 years. I didn't know what I was asking for, right? So you have to be mindful of what it means. That's pretty intense, working with an intense. That was a lot. I wouldn't recommend it. It was challenging, but it was not. Like I said, it was. Probably would have benefited more from somebody who was maybe more of more focused on helping nurture me to get more writing done. I mean, we did write something together, but as I say, everything with him was intense. This is everything, and you know, I knew his family. And his wife would be like, "Oh, he's not so bad. He used to work with these young men and mentor them." And I'm like, "When was that?" She said, "Oh, it was years ago." You know, at home he's a pussycat. I'm like, I never saw any of that until after I graduated. And he was like my biggest fan. He was like wonderful. I mean, he always was, but as I said, very much an intense kind of personality. So just being mindful. I knew that a little bit because I had spoken with students, and you should do the same thing in thinking about what are my needs. This is a big investment of your funds, but it's a even larger investment of your time and your doctoral programs are stressful. So you got to really think about what's going to be good for me, what's going to be good for my family. Quick joke with Ohio State. I was at the beginning of my marriage in 1998. Ohio State is such a strange place. They wrote like the stat on the board, like, this is 50%. Do you know what this is? And I'm like, I'm like, you don't know what that is. And I was like, that is the divorce rate of people in our doctoral program. Like, this is the orientation? Like, this is how we're starting, really? So I told my wife, I told my wife, I said, well, look, I wrote something on a piece of paper. I said, do you know what this is? Like, this is divorce rate. I was like, I hope we make it, Anyway, we did make it. It's, married now for 26 years, but it was crazy. So.
Thank you both. Go ahead.
I'll just add about mentorship that there's all different kinds of mentors. And so, in your dissertation, like sometimes you have an advisor, but it's not necessarily who's going to sponsor your dissertation. So you work most closely with whoever sponsors your dissertation. But you also have different people on your committee, and there's, just encouraging you to build networks that not everyone is going to contribute in the same way, and different mentors might bring different things. And so really to expand your networks to see and to connect with others across your field, not just necessarily the one person.
So let's take your questions. Do you all have questions? Curiosities? Yes. We're going to bring you a microphone for the online audience. And so also those who are online, if you have questions, we can take yours too.
So I'm in the master's program for the MST. Right now I'm working with Dr. Riccio, and I've heard that it's recommended to teach a little bit or at least go into the workforce before getting a doctorate. And I think Dr. Gooden also kind of alluded to that. Could you explain maybe if you agree with this statement, if there are nuances to it, and also what you would recommend doing during that time away from the education system?
That's the case for our program in curriculum and teaching. We have required teaching before you apply. And but I think even if we didn't, I think it's good advice, because first of all, you're looking towards the jobs past your doctorate. And so often, let's say, you might be going into, if you go into teacher education, for example, you have to have had teaching experience in order to do that. But I also think that being in the field helps to illuminate the kinds of questions and dilemmas that you want to research. And so it's very rich in that way that it makes your application stronger.
I totally agree. In leadership, it was not required that you have served as a principal or superintendent or anything like that. But having 4 years as a teacher and a department chair just made my experiences so much richer. The kinds of, even the kinds of things that I realized after I graduated and became an assistant prof. I've drawn on my middle school and high school teaching all throughout my life. I mean, it's made me a better teacher of graduate students, and I actually taught an undergraduate class as part of my doc program. So I just would not trade that for anything in the world. Plus, it gave me a different sense of calm. I realized some people who didn't have the teaching experience, they were stretched in a different way than I was. I was telling a couple of students earlier, because I had been a math teacher, and I'd say it was a great program. I don't want y'all to think it wasn't, but we had a professor who would give like 150 to 200 pages of statistics every week, and every Wednesday you show up to his class. The first thing you would do is take a quiz. And so, we got people who are high-achieving folks in a doc program who had never failed a quiz before. So I was kind of like, the math teacher in me was like, well, I had figured out I could fail this one, I could fail that one, because I'm full-time. I wouldn't see the professor. If I don't pass these right here, can I still get a B, and you just need to keep a 3.0? I was like, cool, I'm not gonna do so well in your class, but I'm not taking it again. That's my only goal, because I think it's an awful class. I didn't say that last part, but I thought it. Ultimately, I was fine, and I think I ended up being like a B+ in the class. But my grounding as a teacher just again made me so much more confidence, and I sort of saw things a little bit differently than folks who sort of just went directly in. I hope that makes sense.
Other questions?
As most of us are right now graduate students, I want to seek your advice, like what should we do right now to prepare a strong application? How to become a researcher, how to establish a groundwork right now, start doing it to prepare a strong application for a doctorate program.
Well, one thing is to, many of you who are in master's programs have integrated projects or final theses that you're doing. And I think just kind of paying attention to that and making sure that it's, aligning with your interests and might potentially be, for example, a writing sample that you submit, or it might give you more understanding of the issues that then you'll write about in your personal statement. So just really thinking about where in your master's trajectory you will deepen the kind of knowledge that you think will lead to a doctoral program. I think also if you're here, just spending your time, as President Mensah said, just talking with doctoral students, talking with faculty, getting to know what are doctoral programs like. You could take some advanced master's classes or doctoral classes if you have room as electives in your programs, and just really you have an opportunity to try it out and then also show that you're able to do this kind of work, but also get the insider's perspective on what is doctoral education like. You're also welcome to audit courses or to sit in. I think people are really open about including people in these inquiries, so I would recommend that.
I would say specifically, even if you're not taking it for credit, consider taking some methodology courses, because I just found that regardless of if you want to take a couple of types, qualitative, quantitative, that's all the well, it's good. But I just find that when students become more confident in their methods, when they get into a doc program, they've been exposed to that a little bit. They feel, once again, they feel a little bit different in terms of their conversations. Even if they have audited a class, they actually start to, in my mind, if people are saying, what are you thinking about your study? Start saying, oh, I can think about framing it this way. I can set it up this way because I've taken that course and I've done a research project in my qual course, or when I was taking the quant course in analysis of variance, I saw how I can set up my independent variables. So I'm saying all those things because they ground students a little bit more in feeling like I think I can certainly methodologically walk through something like this and design a study so that they're not so nervous that first year and a half, couple of years, because there's a question that you will learn to maybe love, but initially, and maybe it's just me, but I really hated the question that people would ask me in my doc program, like trying to think about how it went. It's just a simple question like, what's your research statement or something? I mean, I don't know, it was something like, what are you working on? And I just hated it because I was like, I couldn't articulate it. I just sound like so unorganized. I go all over. But I mean, when I sat down and thought about that, and thought about methodologically what I was going to do, I felt a whole lot more comfortable saying, because it was clear in my head what I wanted to do. And then my courses and what I selected made a lot more sense. Sometimes you're lucky to do that in the first year. Sometimes you're not. But even if you do the methodology, it sort of sets you up for that, puts you on the road, at least in my opinion.
I also just want to add something that hasn't come up just yet, but you mentioned it a little bit earlier, Mark, on conferencing. Go to your professional conferences. The benefit of being able to do that is that you'll be able to meet with other graduate students, other doctoral students. Many organizations actually have a graduate student forum, so they actually get together as graduate students or doctoral students for lunches, for dinners, poster presentations, different things of that sort. So really get embedded in your professional organizations. Even here at TC, because again, you have so many advantages being here. There's always something going on related to research. Attend talks that are happening. Ask the presenters about their research and how they were able to do their research. If professors are presenting it's local, go and hear their research conversations and research talks. So kind of really embed yourself into that. When I was actually in my doctoral program, I didn't do so much of it in my master's program, but I kept a journal and I wrote down questions and thoughts I had. I wrote down titles of research papers I was going to write. By writing a title, it helped me to remember what my actual idea and my interests and my questions were. But when it was time for me to do my dissertation work, I went back to my journal and like, here's my dissertation topic right here. I've been writing about it for 2 years. I actually defended my certification exam, they call it here. My institution is called a qualifying exam. I defended my qualifying exam, went back to my advisor and said, I don't think I want to do that. And she's like, okay, what do you want to do? And I went back to my journal, like all my questions were here. They were kind of the more or less outlined, had different iterations of what I was thinking. It was already there. So start doing that now. Tell my master's students when I'm working with them, keep a journal. Every class you're taking, what questions are coming out for you in the context of that particular course? Whether you're taking sociology or history or a teacher ed class, what questions keep bubbling up? The practice, being in the classroom, being in the field setting, what questions do you see? What are you thinking about? And those can be the basis for you to start thinking about what would that transition look like if you were to move into a doctoral studies program. O-line, yes.
We have one question from the virtual audience. The question is, I don't have a research experience at a lab. How can I improve my competitiveness? There are only 2 months left. I'm someone who's applying soon. How can they become more competitive?
I mean, I think that it's not all about your CV. So I think if you have more, leeway thinking about what are those experiences that you might put on there, right? But also how you're conveying that in your personal statement. So you might not have had the opportunity to be in a lab, but how would you characterize the kind of experience or research you want to do when you have that type of experience in your doctoral program? So that's one bit of advice.
And I would say, how did you get to what it is that you want to do and where you want to go? Being able to lay it out for someone to be able to read and see what you're thinking, how you're thinking about it, how long have you been thinking about it, and if you are passionate about trying to find an answer for it. Your experiences are your experiences, but when you start to be able to think about where you want to go in terms of doctoral studies and doctoral education, it's almost like you telling everybody, this is what I want to be able to contribute to ongoing conversations that are happening. And because of your unique experiences, we don't know what those answers are. So it's important for you to be able to help us to see where you want to go with this. I ask all of my students when they're like, what do you want to do with this degree? Sometimes they tell me they know, and sometimes they don't know. And we try to figure, okay, well, you don't need to let me know now, but next semester I'm going to ask you, what do you want to do with this degree? Because there has to be some kind of a trail to where you want to go. And part of that, early in your doctoral studies or as you're applying for your program, like we need to have a little hint of that, and have some kind of a little bit of a connection to that as you're applying and looking at who are the faculty in the program that you're interested in. But it's okay if you don't know. Sometimes I tell students, I worry if you came in with the same idea in your personal statement that you're leaving with. You can make iterations and changes, but you're going to change. And so you want to be open to that. And so being able to read that even in a personal statement, that you've been able to take your life experiences and it's taking you in all these different directions, but you've landed here, that's a good story to be able to tell. And now we'll say, okay, I see where they're going with this. I want to invest in them, be able to help them to move into the next part of that. So I did see 2 hands, I thought. 1, 2, okay.
Hi. I'm Julia, first-year master's student in the International Education Program. I would ask you to elaborate a little bit more on what's the correlation that our research interests should have with the professors and the institution in terms of how close or how complementary?
I would just say, is your general topic something that fits in the general area of expertise? So it doesn't have to be your exact topic, but is that something that's represented there, or the methodological approach that's taken? So if you want to do quantitative work, but there's nobody who's doing quantitative research in that department, then that's a challenge, right? So it doesn't have to be exact, but just seeing resonances.
And then as you get to know the faculty, just say, for example, if you're going to be here, there are other faculty that may have that particular interest. You'll have a committee member. So if you're EDD, it's 4. If you're PhD, it's 5. So somewhere among those additional committee members should have some interest that's related to yours as well. And to be able to have a sponsor who's going to help you through your dissertation process, have a good relationship with that particular person on the committee as well, that you can work together around that. So I am science education, but I'm on committees in curriculum and teaching. I've been music, because the person's work was connected. And so you can think about it like that. So your sponsor does not have to know everything, but they should at least be willing to help you to move you to that next direction, but have committee members that are also going to be there to be able to help with you. And you can use your committee members in various ways. Now, another one that could also possibly happen, as you're attending conferences and you meet other professors in other places, they could also become committee members in the end. Again, there's a negotiation and conversations you'll have with your sponsor that's here, but I'm on a number of dissertations of students at other institutions. So people are going to be there to help you, if you reach out to them and make that and do that networking and make those kinds of connections.
Hi, thank you so much for that. But could you please clarify a bit what's the difference between sponsor and advisor? Because I'm an international student and I don't know the difference between them. And can I also ask my initial question? So when you see an application, do you expect the research question to be fully fledged? Because in a way, the application process, at least for me, it seems like it forces us to appear very confident. This is the research question that I want to address, but in reality, in 5 years, a lot can change. So how much certainty do you expect at the application level? Thank you.
For me, I'll just speak for me. I'm not looking for the certainty of it, because you're coming into a program to learn and to grow more about your question. So really, when I read a statement, I'm looking to see, do they have questions of inquiry? How did they get to that particular question? Does it seem interesting to me to want to work with the student to be able to get there? So I'm not expecting a full-blown question. As I said, I expect the question actually to change as you go through your doctoral studies. Now, sponsor and advisor. The sponsor is the person that's going to be like your primary advisor that's going to help you and lead you and guide you through your dissertation or your doctoral studies in some ways, but through your dissertation specifically. Now, advisors can be any and everybody. It could be a mentor, it can be another professor, but sometimes the language is the same. And even at different institutions you would go to, they may call it the same person. So I go back and forth because in my institution, it was actually called the advisor. TC calls it the sponsor. And so then there's other languages in terms of, readers, like who's your second reader, who's your third reader, who's your committee. So it's just a lot of language. But to kind of sum it down, it's like you're going to have maybe 1 or 2 people that's going to be kind of like your primary persons that will be working with you to help flesh out your research question, your methodology, that will help you through your coursework. Sometimes we call it the academic advisor. The academic advisor could be somebody different from your sponsor. So being able to talk to the faculty to figure out what particular role that they're going to serve, but you will have somebody that's kind of like the person, your go-to person, who's going to really talk to you, help you to think about your research. In our program, we have 2. So most of our doctoral students are going to have 2 people that are mainly doing that, and we call that their committee. But there may be 1 person who's going to be more primary than the other person. So it just kind of sort of depends on how different faculty talk about it here, but also at other institutions. So sponsors and advisors could be kind of like one and the same.
All right.
We'll take this as our last question, and I know that Maria, Paula has to go to class. Mark, are you around? You're standing around. I'll be able to stay around if anybody wants to talk to us. But I want to thank my colleagues, for being here, for you also being here, and for those that are online. So we're going to take the last question, sir, if you have it. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I am the only face at TC, but I'd like to share that I was applying for a doctorate a year ago. I missed the deadline. I interviewed, and Dr. Tomasulu said, do a master's, and then we'll consider you next year if you want. I did my master's, and then I applied for the EDD. I got in, and I was told that I would be assigned my advisor in due time. So my point is, I got in without an advisor. Of course, I've been at DC, and that's my home and my sweet home for a year now. So I knew a lot of professors. I talked to a number of them. I got very short of threatening to be able to get in the doctoral program. But my point is could it happen that you get into the PhD or PhD program without having a prior advisor?
Definitely. Definitely. So the process that we have in our program is that students do apply without an advisor, and then they're assigned two people at the point of admissions. And so when it comes to orientation, they know who their two advisors are. So yes, most of the time you don't know who your advisor is until you come.
Yeah, and I just add one point. At my last institution, students had a temporary advisor, and that was the person who could really shepherd you in and answer your questions, and then learn a little bit more about what you wanted, and then help you, get to the advisor that aligned more with your interests. It could be your temporary advisor; it didn't have to be. Sometimes it was hard trying to say to students, "It's okay that you can leave your temporary advisor," because they thought there was some political ramifications. But no, not really. There isn't. So some institutions do it that way. And in fact, I would say our program is the same way here at Teachers College. Like if you come in, you just make sure you have a temporary advisor, because we don't want you just coming into the program not having anybody to connect to one-on-one. So that we do the same thing.
All right. So can we get a round of applause for the panel, please?